Well, this video tonight was inspired by two events today. So the first event was that one of our patients at work, a very wealthy individual, without a doubt, this person makes over $1 million a year. Drives up in his Jaguar, whatever. And when it comes to paying his medical bill in our office, then essentially he wants a discount. So I'm not going to go into any of these details here, but while he was paying his bill, he was complaining that he was being basically taxed too much. His taxes are too high, and he was going to be damned if his contribution, if anybody is going to raise the cap on Social Security contributions for anybody in his tax bracket. And the way he explained it, was, look, I may be considered a wealthy person, but I've never collected a single dime from the federal government. And, I've worked very hard for it. And so I interrupted him and I said, well, wait a minute. So you're telling me you're paying taxes, and he says yes, because the middle class in America, this is how he phrased it, isn't paying shit. They're not paying taxes. And look at the lower classes; they're paying zero. So why should I be taxed for all this stuff? And I said, well, wait a minute. Don't you get a certain tax breaks, on your property, on your investments, and all of this stuff? He said, sure I do, but I'm paying for the rest of everybody. And I said, excuse me, first of all, most people who work, on Wall Street are investors, and they don't, they may be working, but their money is working for them. So, and I, myself work basically very hard as well, and I pay my taxes. I don't have a problem with it. So taxes are basically for the greater good of the society. And he says, well, I'm paying too much tax. 35% tax is completely ridiculous. And I said, well, I'm basically paying the same percentage. And, I'm a middle income earner, and I can barely make it. I don't even have my own house. I don't own my house. I rent an apartment. So this is what started all this off. And then, of course, during my lunch break, I got absolutely furious when I read this article, and which resonated with me completely. And I'm going to read you an excerpt of it. And this came from a blog, and I'm going to give the vlogger for this credit. The name is Bada Bing, and I found this on the DCOS site. And DCOS is a mixed bag, because they're so biased. Most of the time, these posters on there are so biased towards the Democratic Party. Heaven forbid anybody criticizes the Democrats. But this was a different kind of a diary, and so let me read you an excerpt from this. And he took this evidently from another blog, so it's endless. But how does one decrease the cost of labor in America? Well, first you have to bust the unions. Check. Then you have to create a pressing need for people to work. Perhaps give them an easy access to credit, and then get them to go so deeply into debt that they will have to work until they die to pay them off. Check. It also helps if you push up the cost of living by manipulating commodity prices. Check. Then take away people's retirement savings. Check. lower interest rates to make savings futile, and interest income inadequate. Check. And finally, threaten to take away the 12% a year that people have been saving for retirement by labeling Social Security an entitlement program, as if it wasn't money that Americans worked for their whole lives to save and gave to the government in good faith. Now, the pollster continues with many statistics here, and I'm going to try to post a link to this particular diary. As Alan Smith says, Ronald Reagan and Alan Greenspan pulled off one of the greatest frauds ever perpetrated against the American people in the history of this great nation, and the underlying scam is still alive and well more than a quarter of a century later. Our nation has a deep crisis in public trust in our government because they have proven to be untrustworthy, and nothing has been done to regain that trust whatsoever. If you allow bank robbers to continue robbing, guess what? They will continue doing it. The real solution should not just be to write off the debts, but make those who caused this national catastrophe to be held accountable, to open their books for all to see, and for the 47 trillion in toxic debts to be acknowledged once and for all. As far as our jobs are concerned, consider this brutal truth. To date, not one president or our bought-off Congress has ever initiated a tax on corporations for sending our jobs overseas. No, quite the opposite. So what few jobs are created are sent to nations where slave wages are acceptable, and there's no such thing as a union. That's why we have no jobs, and that's why the jobs are not coming back. Ever. I could make this a two-part diary, I suppose, but I'll end right here.